This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. Not much wrestling news tonight, and I certainly didn't feel like watching Raw when I got back from the gym, but I did, other than discuss some stuff with Rick Bassman, watch the Dana White interview on Piers Morgan, who is a very good interviewer, by the way. But this was like the most personal interview Dana White has ever done. And it was very interesting, but I'll give you guys the Cole's notes or Hannibal's notes version. He had a rough childhood. His father was an alcoholic. He doesn't seem to ever have had a good relationship with his mother. Both of his parents are dead. They both died recently, which he exposed in this interview for the first time. His dad, he paid for the funeral, took care of the whole thing. He had nothing to do with the mother's funeral. I don't believe he attended either one. It was the gist that I got of it out of this. He doesn't believe in God. He grew up Roman Catholic, was an altar boy. He's not like gonna force his opinion of religion or anything on anybody, but he says he honestly doesn't know what happens, and in his opinion, it's very much over when it comes to that. He apologized to his kids for the incident where him and his wife were slapping each other drunk that got on TMZ. He said that was the worst part about that attention, having to deal with the kids. He says he doesn't care what people outside of his inner circle think. His friends know how he is. He was chased out of Boston at one point by someone from the mafia who he thought Dana owed him $2,500. And he says if he hadn't been chased out of Boston, he ended up flying to Delta because they were going to, I guess, kill him if he didn't pay that. He had no way of paying that, and he didn't feel he owed it. He never would have gone to Vegas, and things wouldn't have turned out the way they had. He says one of his goals is for UFC to become the biggest sport worldwide. Fighting is the easiest sport to understand. I have to admit that. I played rugby. I still don't understand rugby. I was a national champion, Olympic trials silver medalist, an amateur wrestler, was on the national team. I still don't understand all the rules of amateur wrestling, to be honest. Cage fighting, there is rules, actually. I mean, I was just reviewing the Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir first fight where Brock was ground, and Brock would have won it if it was he obviously won the rematch, but the first fight against Frank Mir, when he was ground and pounding Mir, he got a couple hits to the back of Mir's head. It was called up. So obviously there is some rules that I don't really understand in MMA as far as the intricacy of the rules. But yes, fighting is the simplest to understand. I don't understand cricket. I don't want to understand cricket. Football, honestly, I'm not a football fan. I don't get it either. Hockey, I don't really get. The only part I like about hockey is the fighting. It's very boring to me. I know that's blasphemous to say being from Canada. He says MMA went from not being regulated and being in a situation where no venues wanted it to being a situation where they're breaking records in venues and venues are begging for UFC to come. So he agrees with John McCann, calling it in the past human cockfighting. That was before Dana White had anything to do with it. And he wanted MMA to be regulated for those reasons, because it wouldn't have been able to grow the way it was going, no holds barred. He says he doesn't do this for the money. He could have retired in 2016. Does it because he loves it and he hasn't reached his goals yet. He wants to break more records, do what people say can't be done. He would not confirm or deny Forbes saying he's worth $500 million is correct, but he would say none of the numbers that anyone estimates online are correct. I think if you search up my net worth, it says I'm worth 3 to 5 million. So I think Tony Atlas said he's worth 2 million. So yeah, I wouldn't believe the online stuff. He says America has a problem with people being soft. Canada has that problem too, but I mean, people get offended easier in America than Canada. That's for sure, 100% for sure. He says working with Abu Dhabi and selling sports in the UAE has been a good relationship. They've been in business 15 years together. He says Qatar also has a lot of money. Saudi Arabia does too. He can see a lot more sports being brought to these Saudi countries. He would not comment on the human rights situations there. He says the Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg fight has fallen off the table and will not happen. He said it would have been the biggest fight ever, other than if Trump would have fought Putin. But I mean, it could have realistically happened and made billions. But he says he was in talks with him, but it never happened. This was the first I heard about that. That's how much in the wrestling bubble I'm in. I didn't even hear about this Elon Musk stuff, and I do listen to interviews by Elon Musk. He says Connor is back training and expects him to be back next year. He says it's hard to be as hungry as you are once you make big money. It's hard going from being on a yacht to having to go back to training. He says Connor is fighting a lot less now that he's very rich, and he feels that he's lost in recent fights because his drive is not where it used to be. But that happens with everyone. Happened with Ronda Rousey too, which, by the way, he said in this, Ronda Rousey was the one that convinced him to bring female MMA to UFC. He says The Rock didn't want to go on social media at one point, and he was the one that got The Rock on social media, and he set The Rock up with his personal social media team, and now look how huge The Rock is on social media. He says he never wants to see a day where another biological male is competing with his daughter. He doesn't. I don't think he would be a big fan of Nyla Rose, or I think he'd be more on the Rick Steiner side of things. Let's just put it that way. I forget the Impact transgender wrestler's name that had the issue with Rick Steiner, which I believe it caused poor Bronson Rex Steiner to be have his main roster debut delayed. But yeah, he said he's glad his daughter is a cheerleader, so he doesn't have to deal with the gender stuff that's going on these days. He says Muhammad Ali is his favorite fighter, but he thinks that John Jones is the baddest man ever on the planet, badder than Mike Tyson. And if someone had to fight for Dana White's life, he would say it'd be John Jones. He's never been defeated. He talks about that to end it off, finishes off plugging his doctor, who has helped him diet-wise, and now he's a lot healthier. Dana White's an extremely successful guy, extremely popular guy. It'll be interesting to see what it's going to happen now that Endeavor is part of WWE. It's only a matter of time before we see Dana White do something on WWE. I mean, I know that's not something that's probably at the top of his priority list, but it could be very interesting. Dana White, well, say what you want about him. He's very successful. Piers Morgan, there you go. Thank you, kind sir. Someone says 67, whatever that means. I don't know. Anyways, I wish everybody a good evening. You know what? I'm so uninterested in WWE right now. I didn't even look at the results of Raw. I saw something pop up in a feed, two fat guys fighting each other. I just kept scrolling. Not interested. Anyways, thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click